The smell of blood. Bodies line the road, rising above the earth in silent rows that refuse to end. Soldiers, women, children, left and fixed in place, left there long enough for the world itself to take notice. Some hung completely still, surrendered to whatever had already taken them. Others trembled faintly, heads thrown back, jaws slack, breath breaking into wet, uneven gasps that came slower each time. Eyes left open, clouded and unseeing. Mouths fixed in shapes that no longer formed words, as if the last thing they tried to say had never quite made it out. They stretched farther than the eye could follow, fading slowly into the distance until they dissolved into a blur against the horizon. The ground beneath them had darkened, soaking so deeply it no longer resembled earth. The air carried it, thick, heavy, impossible to ignore. Nothing moved except the occasional shift of what remained. And it all echoes through history. The legacy of a ruler who understood the power of fear and what fear turns men into. Before the monster, there was a boy. Before the kingdom of fear, there was a gilded cage. It began in the heart of the 15th century, in the land of Wallachia, a place caught between two powers that did not bend, one from the west, one from the east, each pressing inward, each demanding loyalty, each ready to take what was not given. There was no safety there, no lasting peace. Alliances shifted like fog, forming and dissolving without warning. What held one day could collapse the next. Trust was fragile. Power was temporary. And weakness was always punished. It was a land where survival did not belong to the just or the honorable, but those willing to become something else. Into this world was born a boy, the second son of a man already marked by war and allegiance. His father belonged to a secret order, sworn to defend Christendom against the growing power of the Ottoman Empire, a brotherhood that dealt in oaths, in blood, and in symbols meant to outlive the men who carried them. For this he was given a name, Dracula, the Dragon, a title that carried weight, fear, and expectation. And so the boy inherited it, not as a title, but as something that would follow him, shape him, and refuse to let him be anything else. He would come to be known as Dracula, the son of the dragon. To prove his loyalty to the Ottoman Sultan Murad II, Vlad's father gave his two sons as political hostages. Young Vlad and his brother Radu were sent to a remote fortress, a prison where they were educated in science, philosophy, and the art of war. But the most profound lessons were not taught in a classroom. They were lessons in power. While his younger brother Radu adapted, befriending the Sultan's son, Vlad was defiant, and his punishments only hardened his spirit. He watched, he learned, and he festered. He witnessed the absolute unquestionable power of the Sultan. He saw the brutal efficiency of the Ottoman justice, their public execution designed as spectacles of slow, agonizing death. He saw how a single act of extreme cruelty could prevent 1,000 rebellions. Here, in the heart of his enemy's empire, a dark understanding began to take root. No long after, his world shattered. News arrived that his father had been slain, and his older brother Mircea, blinded and buried alive. At just 16, Vlad was an orphan, his family destroyed by betrayal. The lesson was now complete, burned into his soul with the fire of vengeance. Loyalty was a lie, trust was for fools. The only currency that never lost its value was fear. Upon his release, he began a lifelong blood-soaked quest to reclaim his father's throne. After a first reign that lasted only a short time, he spent 8 long years in exile, a prince without a kingdom, a dragon without a horde. But all the while he was sharpening the weapon forged in captivity. Young and already hardened, he seized the throne of Wallachia. Voivod Vlad III, Dracula, was master of his domain, and he was determined to revolutionize its affairs. In a letter, he laid out his mind with chilling clarity.
When a man is strong and powerful, he can make peace as he wants to. But when he is weak, a stronger one will come and do what he wants to him.
He would never be weak again. The boy who had been a hostage was now a king. The lessons were over. It was time to rule with blood and an iron fist. Vlad's second reign began with a reckoning. On Easter Sunday of 1457, he invited hundreds of the noble boyar families, those who had conspired against his own, to a grand feast. They came expecting to broker for power. They did not understand the man they were dealing with. As the feast concluded, Vlad accused them of treason, a treason that had plagued Wallachia for years. His guards had orders. The elder nobles were seized and impaled on the spot. The younger, healthier nobles and their families were marched to forced labor, rebuilding a remote fortress that would become his personal stronghold. When Ari, with one savage act, he shattered the power of the old nobility, replacing them with men loyal only to him. Order would be absolute. He set aside loyalty from his subjects and replaced it with terror. He unleashed a campaign of absolute justice, targeting dishonest merchants, corrupt officials, and common criminals. His methods were varied: beheading, boiling, flaying. But one became his signature, an act so dreadful it would give him the name history would never forget: Vlad Tepes, Vlad the Impaler. Impalement was a slow and gruesome art. A sharpened stake, not too sharp, was inserted through the body, avoiding vital organs. The victim was hoisted upright, and their own weight would cause the stake to slide deeper, very slowly. A practice not intended to kill, but to sustain life as long as possible, and with it, suffering. A death that could take days, sometimes even weeks, a public display of power. A legend is told of a golden cup Vlad placed by a public fountain in his capital. Anyone could drink from it, but it was to remain there unstolen. Throughout his entire reign, in a land of poverty, the cup was never taken, for the value of a single cup of gold was not worth a slow and painful death. There's also another story that tells of a visiting merchant who stole gold from a local man. The next day, Vlad's men secretly returned the stolen purse, adding one extra coin. When the owner reported the extra coin, Vlad revealed the thief had already been captured and impaled. Then he warned him. Had he kept that coin, he would have shared the same fate. His cruelty was also a tool of statecraft. When envoys from the Ottoman Sultan refused to remove their turbans in his presence, citing religious custom, Vlad smiled and said he wished to strengthen their custom. He then ordered the turbans nailed to their skulls. The message was clear. On Wallachian soil, there was only one authority. The submissive hostage was gone. A sovereign had taken his place. The insult to the Sultan's envoys was a declaration of war. After refusing to pay his annual tribute, Vlad launched a brutal campaign into Ottoman territory during the winter of 1461, moving with incredible speed. In a letter to his allies, he boasted his success, providing a chilling count. Over 20,000 killed, without counting those whom they burned in homes, or the Turks whose heads were cut by their soldiers. Enraged, Sultan Mehmed II, the conqueror of Constantinople, the man who had grown up alongside Vlad, marched on Wallachia with a colossal army. He expected to engage in battle. He was wildly mistaken. Vlad turned his entire country into a weapon. He poisoned wells, burned villages, and launched terrifying hit-and-run attacks before melting back into the forests. But his masterpiece awaited Mehmed's army as they approached the capital of Targoviste. There, Ottoman soldiers, hardened veterans of countless campaigns, entered the valley and were instantly paralyzed. A sudden vision so vicious that their minds could not make sense of what they were seeing. A forest, vast and dark, lay before them, but not a tree in sight. A field of impaled bodies and spilled blood, extending as far as the eye could see. The forest of the impaled. 20,000 people, captured Turkish soldiers and others, lay dead or agonizing before them. Thousands of stakes littered the valley, one after the other, randomly placed. Each stake held a human figure, some still moving, others already lost to decay, men, women, and children. They were placed close together, stretching across the fields in silent rows. Their heights varied, a grim reflection of their former rank. The air itself had turned foul, thick with a stench so overwhelming that even hardened soldiers could not endure it. This was a spectacle meant to be remembered. Stories spread across Europe, depicting Vlad dining calmly amidst the forest of his dying victims. The effect was absolute. Even Sultan Mehmed II, renowned for his own ruthlessness, was shaken. The sight of his captured soldiers suffering such an unspeakable fate broke his army's morale. Faced with his vision of hell on earth, the mighty Sultan, the conqueror of the Byzantine Empire, turned his army around and retreated. Vlad was victorious. He had held back the most powerful empire on earth by showing them a madness so profound it made war itself seem untenable. The victory brought by the forest of the impaled was temporary. Mehmed left behind Vlad's own brother, Radu, to contest the throne with Ottoman support. Betrayed and surrounded, Vlad fled to Hungary, only to be arrested and imprisoned once more. For 12 years, the Impaler Lord was again a prisoner. Released in 1475, he regained his throne for a final time, late in 1476, but within months, he was ambushed. His enemies decapitated him. His head was preserved in honey and sent to Constantinople, presented to Sultan Mehmed II as a trophy. The final irrefutable proof that the dragon was death. The location of his body remains a mystery. But death was not the end. It was the beginning of his legend. In the West, fueled by gruesome pamphlets, he was remembered as a bloodthirsty monster. This is the image that reached an Irish author named Bram Stoker, who borrowed the name Dracula and attached it to a fictional vampire, forever intertwining the historical ruler with a supernatural predator. Yet, in his homeland of Romania, the story is far more complex. There is not a monster, but a national hero, a fierce defender of Wallachian independence who stood against an overwhelming empire. His extreme methods were a necessary evil in an extreme age, the only measures strong enough to forge a nation and punish a corrupt nobility. He was the harsh but just ruler who made the road so safe that a golden cup could sit unguarded. And so, his single life gave birth to two immortal legends: the blood-drinking fiend of the West and the green protector of the East. He was a man shaped by trauma into a weapon of terrifying efficiency, who learned as a boy that power was absolute and mercy was a weakness. He proved that terror travels faster than armies, and that a reputation for horror can be more effective than a fortress wall. He built his kingdom on this principle, and in doing so created a legacy of dread so potent it has outlived empires and become immortal. His reign was a grand, horrific experiment in the mechanics of fear. His methods were monstrous, yet they brought order from chaos and held an empire at bay. His name became a byword for terror, yet many in his homeland revere him as a father of their nation. The stakes have long since turned to dust. The blood has washed away. The fields where they once stood have fallen silent. It lingers in his name, carried through centuries in whispers, in stories told and retold, in the uneasy silence that follows them. It lives in the memory of what was done and in the understanding of what was proven. That fear, once unleashed, does not simply vanish. It settles, it spreads, it takes root. And long after the bodies are gone, long after the earth has swallowed every trace, it endures. A permanent testament to the man who made fear his ultimate weapon, and the cost of wielding it.